The desert doesn't warn you, it just watches. Tucson's Catalina foothills sit beneath the Santa Catalina Mountains like a secret kept by stone, sun-scorched, silent, and deceptively peaceful. The kind of neighborhood where people leave their porch lights on not out of fear, but out of habit. Where elderly women still believe their locks mean something, where an 84-year-old grandmother named Nancy Guthrie had spent more than 5 decades building a life so deeply rooted, so quietly dignified, that the desert itself seemed to hold its breath in her presence. She was a mother. 3 children, Savannah, Annie, and Cameron, had grown up watching her hands in the kitchen, hearing her voice in the hallway, feeling the specific warmth that only a mother of her particular grace can give. She was also fragile in the way that survivors often are, not broken, but dependent. A surgically implanted pacemaker kept her heart in rhythm, a small titanium miracle stitched into her chest that meant the difference between alive and gone. At 9:48 on a Friday night, her garage door groaned shut behind her. The mechanical hum faded, the lights went out. That was the last ordinary moment of her life. Because someone was already waiting. Not a stranger, not a desperate man making a terrible decision in the dark. This was something else entirely. Something patient, precise, and profoundly evil. Whoever stood in the shadows beyond Nancy's driveway that night had not arrived by accident. They had been studying her. They knew her schedule down to the minute. They knew her medical vulnerabilities. They knew exactly when her daughter would be gone, when the house would be empty of witnesses, when the window of absolute, total vulnerability would open wide enough to walk through. At 1:45 in the morning, the entire neighborhood went electronically blind. A military-grade Wi-Fi jammer swept through the area like an invisible wave, strangling every internet signal within range. Security cameras blinked out. Smart doorbells went deaf. The digital nervous system of an entire street gone in an instant. And then, captured in the dying seconds of one Ring camera's memory before it lost connection forever, a masked figure appeared at Nancy's front door, calm, deliberate, and doing something so calculated it turned investigators' blood cold. They reached out and plucked a single leaf from the potted plant beside the door, pressing it gently against the camera lens, not smashing it, not ripping it from the wall, just covering it delicately, as if to say, "I want you to look, I just don't want you to see me." They wanted her to come to the door herself. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy Guthrie's cardiac monitor flatlined, not because her heart stopped, but because the device transmitting its signal to the outside world was somehow killed. In a 40-minute window of complete darkness, an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker and nowhere to run was torn out of her own home. The foyer told the only story that mattered. Something violent had happened there. And then, silence. She was simply gone. By Sunday morning, the world knew Nancy Guthrie's name. Her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, the face millions of Americans wake up to every morning on national television, was now living inside a nightmare that no camera could follow. The FBI flooded the Arizona desert with more than 400 agents. Helicopters swept the canyons. Ground teams moved through brush and rock under a merciless sun. And then the ransom notes arrived. They didn't go to the family. They went to TMZ, to local Tucson television stations, demanding $6 million in untraceable Bitcoin. And they contained something that made federal investigators go very still. Details about the crime scene that had never been released to the public. The exact position of a backyard floodlight, stolen data from Nancy's Apple Watch, information that could only exist in the hands of someone who had been inside that house or inside the investigation itself. And then came Derek Kala. Out of California, slithering through the chaos like something that feeds on grief, Kala began posing online as the kidnapper, sending messages to the family, demanding money, performing a sick imitation of the monster who actually took her. The FBI Cyber Division dismantled him within hours, isolated his IP address, exposed him for the opportunistic predator he was. But the damage was done. His interference created noise, layers of digital fog that briefly obscured the trail of the real perpetrator, who remained invisible, disciplined, and somewhere in the dark with Nancy. The investigators turned inward. They turned toward family. The blue Honda CR-V became the center of the world for several devastating weeks. It belonged to Tommaso Cayone, Savannah's husband, Nancy's son-in-law, the man who had driven the elderly woman home just hours before she vanished. The media didn't wait for facts. They constructed a narrative of betrayal in real time, broadcasting it to millions, turning a grieving family member into a headline villain before a single piece of evidence had been properly examined. Sheriff Chris Nanos eventually stood before cameras and called it what it was: reckless, irresponsible, dangerous. The FBI tore that car apart anyway, not because they believed it, but because they had to be certain. Alternative light sources, adhesive lifts, particulate vacuums, fabric panels removed, door linings stripped, every biological trace cataloged, mapped, identified. Every genetic signature belonging to the innocent family members who rode in that car was logged and set aside. The forensic team was looking for one thing, the one strand, the one cell, the one invisible fragment of the person who didn't belong. They found nothing. Tommaso was cleared, the family was cleared, and the terrifying truth became impossible to avoid. Whoever did this left no obvious trail, no witness, no accomplice, nothing but a ghost and an 84-year-old woman who had simply ceased to exist. Former intelligence officer Tracy Walder said it plainly on national television. Calculated predators do not target fragile elderly women unless they are driven by something deeply personal, a psychotic grievance, or a dangerous obsession with someone in that woman's family. Someone had fixated on Savannah Guthrie, had hunted her family's home address, had spent weeks, possibly months, calculating her net worth, mapping her mother's routine, rehearsing every step of an operation so disciplined it looked military. This was not a crime of opportunity. This was a siege. The investigation collapsed into its final form, microscopic. A single degraded fragment of human DNA scraped from the violent struggle at the front door. Barely enough to work with, nearly nothing, but enough. The FBI handed it to C.C. Moore, one of the most respected names in investigative genetic genealogy, a woman who has helped crack cases that once seemed permanently cold. The method is painstaking. Upload the broken genetic code into public ancestry databases and wait for distant cousins, innocent people who've taken DNA tests for fun, to unknowingly illuminate the path to their dangerous relative. It is a hunt conducted in silence, measured in centimorgans and probability tables, invisible to the outside world. But it is closing in. The desert is vast, the foothills are quiet, but Nancy Guthrie's kidnapper made one mistake in an otherwise flawless operation. He bled. And blood, unlike Wi-Fi signals, cannot be jammed. It cannot be obscured by a leaf pressed against a camera lens. It cannot be deleted from a database or hidden behind an encrypted email. Somewhere in Arizona or beyond it, a man is living his ordinary life, completely unaware that his own DNA, carried unknowingly by his cousins, uploaded voluntarily by strangers, is drawing a tightening circle around everything he thought he had erased. The clock is not ticking for Nancy. It is ticking for him.